All right, everybody. Really excited for this conversation, and gonna make sure we invite our amazing guests. So as you're coming in, from there they are.
Hey.
How's it going? SK
How
MyLin.
are you?
So great to see you both.
You too.
I literally haven't even kind of dived into the high level introduction, so
Good.
we're gonna start fresh, and I'm just watching all of these folks coming in.
Yeah,
Nice.
Milwaukee,
I know, Spokane.
yes, Washington, love it.
That's awesome.
Such a great community.
Yeah, El Paso, Texas. Hey guys. Hey, I love Houston.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Of course, you gotta like South Carolina, you know. No, I love it. There's a Hoosier. All right, I see a Hoosier.
Where's Halifax?
Halifax is Canada, I think. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Like, Florida.
Baby, take him to the room.
We're on our call now, bud.
Puerto Rico. Awesome.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
We're setting up a little one.
No,
So
you're totally fine. So I'm gonna.
I was like, this is the perfect time, probably, to go still setting up.
Look, let's face it, the little ones are the real stars of the show. Anyway.
Honestly, everyone's really here for them, so we get it.
I'll introduce myself.
Yeah.
I'm Brian Haney. I am a financial professional, lifelong financial professional. Geez, I've been doing this forever. I run a practice outside of Washington, D.C. So for me, it's all things native Washingtonian and D.C.
Yeah.
Sports, like it or not.
Yeah.
I'm also a proud member of the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, more easily recognized as NAFA. I'm a National Board of Trustee member as well. And so I was super thrilled to have the opportunity to be talking to both of you because Life Happens is a tremendous organization that's facilitating this because of the great work that they do, just trying to educate the marketplace on what we need to do.
Yeah.
Financially, how can we do the best things possible for our families?
Yeah.
And so I would love to not hog the spotlight, but turn it over and actually let you start with your story. And I actually have a few things that, depending on kind of how this plays out, I want to make sure I hear about. So the 10-year anniversary, you got to tell me
coming
about
up.
those public.
It's definitely coming up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's SK. It's important to note that I'm really the less great half. The better half is handling the babies right now who just woke up from a little bit of a nap, which is really why we get insurance anyway, right, for them. So, here she is. So, we are SK and MyLin. We are content creators. I am an interior designer by trade. She's an artist. We live in Southern California. And we raised our 3 beautiful boys here in California. I was going to say sunny California, but we're like in a heat wave right now.
So my gosh, the worst.
So it's like happening over here.
Our baby did just get, we came back from the doctors today, and he was diagnosed with bronchitis and an ear infection. So we did have him set up in the room. As he comes back and forth and one of us leaves, it's just
a little attention
out of our hands right now.
In the parental way. But
yeah,
that's really about us. We've got this small family, and we are, growing and thriving here in Southern California.
Oh, I love it. And so the 10-year anniversary, when is this?
I missed it. When's what? Our anniversary?
When's the 10-year anniversary coming up?
Yeah. We actually got married on New Year's Day, believe it or not. We had everyone in our little space where we counted down at midnight and then like said I do right at like the next day. It was really
Right at
great.
midnight, yeah.
Right at midnight. So
the party started at 9. And then like we like hung out and it was great. And then the ceremony started at like 11:45.
Yeah, it was perfect. And like counted down right to New Year. So
it was
January 1st, we will be 10 years married.
I'm so excited. And I saw that you're taking a big trip.
We are.
That people should check out and support and follow. And
absolutely. We appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. We're planning a really exciting 10-year anniversary trip, which we just haven't been able to take or do so many things. We've been kind of growing businesses and babies and like doing all of that. And so, we're going to Tulum. So please check the bio. There's tons of ways to support. Yeah, we appreciate it.
So let me ask you, tell us some of the highlights of the last 10 years as a couple, as parents. What stands out to you the most?
Ooh. Okay, so I think celebrating my 30th birthday, that was right after a couple years after getting married, and she just did it up so big. And that was like a highlight of my life after the wedding.
Definitely big celebration.
Did me a surprise party and then a trip after, and so that was super fun.
Yeah.
Was
definitely
the last big trip?
Before
we did your birthday trip when we found out you were pregnant.
Yeah, you're right. So
we did Spain.
I think that's been pretty fun. Is like traveling's been pretty amazing, and then obviously the highlights are the birth of our children, right? So like we have kids, and that's been great. And we're obviously a queer couple, so they didn't just show up. They didn't shock us.
A lot of planning went into this.
It goes into having these babies, and so that was great. MyLin had a home birth.
Yeah,
which was a whole other bit of planning and like excitement and everything that kind of goes into that. So it's been a really exciting 10 years. We've started companies, we've done so we've just done so much stuff over the years that I think has really just like, solidified our bond.
Partnership.
Yeah, our partnership.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, you both exude love. And I mean, I think anybody watching this can see that, can feel it. It's tangible.
I do like her. Yes.
That's good. Yeah.
It's good to like your person.
It's funny because my wife said that, it's one thing to say you love you, but it's also really important to say that you also like the person too.
Yeah. It's a little harder.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
It
love
is.
That's happening without your consent, but liking someone though, that's out of you're up to.
I do want to kind of get into the main topic that we're trying to talk about, which is how you all have gone about protecting yourselves and your family, because that's important. And as we celebrate Life Insurance Awareness Month, that is something that I think comes up infrequently, and we already just talked about several seminal moments in your life where kind of, life is changing, relationships are changing, and I'd love to just listen to you share. How have you looked at those changes, and then what has it meant to you in terms of the things that you were trying to think about, especially specific to life insurance, but just kind of like finances and just taking care of yourselves in general? What does that all look like?
Well, it's definitely got us more intentional. Definitely more intentional with realizing that, we are now at a place of having 3 kids to care for, and wanting to really set them up, making sure that now that we have them, if anything happens to us, what's their future going to look like, So, that is when we first started. Actually, we were just discussing children, but it was shortly after getting married that we first got life insurance.
Yeah.
So we've had it for several years now. And then as each additional child has come on, we've added it or made some changes. But it was definitely after the marriage.
I think it's all about just like the things you learn and get exposed to even. I think our first life insurance was through my company, my job. I couldn't tell you what it was or what it was worth or where it is now. You know what I mean? Like, I think you just are going through the notions. You're checking the things off. If the company you work for offers benefits, you say yes, right? You don't really ask the questions unless you know the questions to ask. And I think that as we've gotten older, we've just experienced more things. And then once you add another child, you're like, okay, how far can, I don't know what this policy does, how far can that even really go, you know? And so I think just also growing and learning and getting hip to things that people are talking about and what services they're taking advantage of, you know, and seeing, kind of asking those questions and staying curious. Why have I not considered that? What does that look like? What's the difference between that and what I'm doing now? And I think that that's really pushed us in a direction to like you move more intentionally. Yeah.
I love that. Who helped you explore these things? Were there people that you interacted with that kind of pointed you to either a policy, or you even mentioned employee benefits? Like, did you have people helping you kind of figure out what you had? I'm always interested in finding out what influences those
what resources
and who's helped you.
So yes and no, right? Life insurance is one of those things, and I'm sure this is why this exists, right? People don't necessarily take it as seriously as we really should. So I think that I've been prompted a bunch of times over the years, you know, from friends who are working at places, from aunts and uncles who have made adjustments, you know, who are like, you should take this seriously, you know, but like under 30, your brain is like, I've got a bunch of subscriptions to focus on, you know, like whatever you think, whatever silly thing you think, you know, I think that's probably why we're not looking into that influence in a real way, but I feel like it's everywhere. I feel like people aren't trying to influence us appropriately, and instead, you know, there's just a million other things distracting you from what is actually really, really important, valuable to your life.
Well, and I want to pick up on that last line, because you said what's really important and valuable. And I feel like that's, you know, probably a theme a lot of people can connect with, right? That maybe life insurance needs to fit into a different mental box than it does in a lot of other parts of our lives. And so can you just build on that in terms of, you know, what, like literally, what does life insurance mean? Why did you do it? When you look at each other, you know, what kind of commitment are you making when it comes to protecting yourselves, and what were the important factors behind that?
For me, I have like movies and like scenes that run in my head all the time. Like, what's gonna happen if this happens, and what does it look like when that happens, you know? And so I think about, like, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I'm home with our kids, and if anything were to happen to me, like, she would need somebody to come in and help, or like get a nanny, or bring somebody, family in or something. And it's like, okay, well, how would you pay for that? And I've got, you know, college loans, I've got debt and stuff like that. And so I'm just like, what am I leaving my kids? And so that inspired me to look into it as well. And as I meet new people and come across different things and learn about different policies or different terms, I'm still learning about life insurance as we go. I definitely do not know everything. I am new to this, but in what I've learned and received, I want to share it with others, because my family is worth it. Their family is worth it. It doesn't matter if you have kids or if you're married. I just feel like, you know, who's going to be left that loves you when you're gone? And there is a way that you can support them when you're gone. So this was the easy way that I found first to do.
Another thing, and I'll just piggyback, is that I don't have to keep calling out that we're queer, but there's a lot of things that are not set in stone, right? Like, it's 2024 and there's still so much gray area as far as like all of the legalese in regards to who is responsible for who, regardless of my marriage certificate, regardless of my birth certificates, you know, like a lot of there's still so many details that can really wash over who's responsible for who. And it's very important to me that that's really clear, and that we're not leaning on outside sources to clearly be able to make the
Decide for
decisions
what-
and
yeah.
make the decisions that we want for ourselves. And so, I mean, obviously life insurance is not a probate scenario, right? Like it doesn't necessarily dictate who does what and how they do it, but it is just one of those additional things that allows the people I want to make decisions to make them. So I feel like, what happens if I do disappear and my wife needs something, you know? I disappear, is that it's like magic. I wiggle my nose. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what happens if something bad happens? We're both going to Tulum to celebrate an anniversary. Like, anything
really
could happen, right? And like, what will happen? What will happen to my kids? What will they be left with? What will, you know, who's responsible over them? Like, who's going to even handle that money? Like, all of those details I think are really important. And I think that life insurance is sort of that stepping stone into kind of considering, okay, what will happen? Yeah, like what will happen when all of this is said and done? Who's responsible? Who does it go to? How is it meant to impact them even, you know? I think that I've seen a lot of circumstances, which is really unfortunate, where people pass and they've got to raise money, or they've got just enough to handle the burial and nothing to take care of the house or the this or the that, right?
Yeah,
and I think that we get short-sighted. Yeah, we get short-sighted about, this person died, right? And we want to honor that time, and it's a very emotional time. But then the next day comes, and a lot of people are stuck, and they don't know what to do or where to go, or, you know, let alone decision making. They don't have anything to make decisions with, you know? And so I think that has really been eye-opening. It's just like kind of watching people change, watching people pass, watching, you know, the people around us not always have the answers, you know? Like, it's important that I say, okay, what can I make sure I have for my children when they need the answers?
Oh, and you did bring up, and certainly, you know, being a queer family, that is really important, because there's unfortunately still a lot of statistics that suggest, you know, that the LGBTQ community doesn't get the same help, resources, and support as other parts of the fabric of our country. And I also think that there's a lot of challenging barriers when it comes to looking at these types of decisions. And so I just want to say kudos to both of you for championing this, because I think that is so important, to be able to have people speaking to the community and allowing them to see what this is and what it represents in real terms. And that is, you know, like, GoFundMe shouldn't be what happens to your family.
It's and like you're in a grieving process, and now you're having to push this thing out to, like, we need this help for us to be able to, you know, bury our family, or to deal with what they have, you know, left, and if they have kids, like, in caring for them and stuff. It's just, the grieving part is already a lot, and it's going to come in ebbs and flows and stuff, but I want you guys to have financial peace. Like, because the stress that comes from finances.
That's a different.
While grieving a loved one, it's just, sometimes it really puts people over the edge, you know? It's a lot to take in and handle, and some people can't handle it. And the small monthly investment is worth it.
Scheme. I think that's kind of the thing, is like, I understand that it is an investment. And I think that there oftentimes can be a flippant, like, it's just this much, why can't you just pay this? And I disagree with that sentiment. I think that any investment monthly is a real investment. And if you don't have it, right, it can be very challenging. Simultaneously, I think that when we feel like something is necessary, we typically tend to make those things happen. You know, my phone is not going to go off. My phone bill will be paid monthly. It has to, because it's a requirement in my life. Whereas life insurance doesn't always feel like a requirement. People really have convinced themselves that it's like, I can get it eventually, or I'm 20, or I'm, you know, there's so many reasons why we don't need to think about this. And at the same time, we watch young people pass all the time. We watch older people pass who didn't have it, and then leave younger people who are still trying to make their way. Now they're depleting their savings, trying to fund, you know, other. So I feel like, I just think that, I think we treat it very flippant because it doesn't feel like a requirement. when really we should be switching the lens, you know, and really paying attention to the fact that nothing is really promised, and that the only thing that really is that, you know, I don't know, like that's guaranteed.
Yeah.
Preparing for it shouldn't feel like some other, you know,
something taboo.
Yeah, something taboo or something that we can put off for later, because we genuinely do not know when that time would come. But more importantly, it's definitely going to come. If we are saving for retirement, we could also plan to save for what happens after that, right? And so I think it's just really switching the lens and how we look at it a little bit.
And it's better to get it when you're younger too.
Sure is.
Sure is. Absolutely, because part of it, the cost of insurance deals with mortality, right?
Yeah.
The older you get, the more expensive it is, just by math.
Yeah, right. Right. Like any insurance, you know, it's like if you're in the danger zone, you're gonna pay more, and it's like we have an opportunity to like set the tone now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we just mentioned, because you're right. First of all, if insurance was free, we'd get millions and millions of dollars and it'd be, you know, fine, we check that box. It's not. So there are competing financial interests, and there always going to be.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk about what does it look like to create and protect the space in your budget and in your financial world to make sure that this is something that, you know, stays kind of put and isn't something that we forsake. What kind of considerations do you think did you go through, or things that you found helpful as you were looking for that?
Well, I definitely did most of the shopping around for our life insurance, and I just found something that I knew would work in our budget that also allowed for the policy amount to really cover the necessities and leave a little extra for our kids. And so and that's constantly happening and changing.
Yeah.
I just increased it and switched, you know, companies just this past month. So it's just like I'm constantly getting new information, but I'm searching for the information. It's one thing I love about Life Happens is that all of the information is there on the website for me to, you know, look through and kind of get right on the right path. Because a lot of us are just like ignorant to life insurance too. Like we just don't know. It hasn't come across our paths. And so when we hear like, oh yeah, you need to have that, but we don't know anything about it, and it just seems like it's this large monthly thing that we have to pay for, when technically it's not. It's just like I had to talk to different agents and different companies to see what fit us.
And I keep going back to the word insurance. And I think that like young people, when we think about insurance, generally you're paying towards something you may or may not ever see. And like that blows for a lot of people. It's like, my car insurance is just going up and I didn't even, you know what I mean? It's just something you're paying towards, but your car insurance is a requirement.
Yeah.
Because on a large scale, we understand that you're more likely to get in an accident than not. Like eventually you will need protection. And I think that when we're thinking about it, we are so sure we won't. And like there's still this bitterness of paying that insurance monthly that's like, I don't even need this big huge thing until it happens, right? And then there's value there, or until it happens to someone else and you're like, I'm glad I've got my insurance, you know, whatever that looks like. And so I think that that's really how we have to consider it. Unfortunately, it's not a requirement, right? And I think that we've started to look at it in that way. And I think that has forced us to say, this is the amount that we have to be able to put towards this, because without it, unfortunately, I don't have $1 million in savings. Unfortunately, I don't, you know, the 401k started, but it's not hefty enough, you know, like it's not hefty enough to do real work if something happens. And so you want all of these assurances, but really life insurance is kind of the only way to make that happen. It's like the only way to say, I am ensuring that when this happens, not if, right?
Because we know when
it will happen. That these are the things that I have set in place. And I think the only people who are either kind of flippant to that are people who still maybe think that cannot happen. In the way that we, you know, like just as a whole, we don't value it in that same way. It's not a requirement. You don't need it, you know, we kind of treat it like that. And so I think it makes it feel that way. But really, I think that was our our big turning point is like realizing how important it really is. Like, if this plane goes down, what happens to my kids? Like, just as a standard, like,
we gotta have those things. We're on a trip together, just us.
Yeah.
If this car goes off the road or if somebody hits us,
It's
like,
just us.
what do the kids have?
It's
and
just,
so,
you know,
they've got something waiting for them.
Yeah. Now they've got something. Puts a little piece in your
Well, and
heart.
I love that. I was joking the other day with a friend of mine, and we were talking about this, and it was a weird analogy that seemed to fit. It's like, let's think about seat belts, right? Technically, you don't have to wear your seatbelt.
Yeah.
I know.
You don't. I mean,
Wasn't always
you could
there,
get in trouble. You
For
could
sure.
get a ticket.
Yeah.
It's totally fine to get in a car and drive around without a seatbelt on. Why is the seatbelt in the car? For when something happens, right? Same thing with an airplane too, right? You don't have to wear the seatbelt the whole time, but they ask you to put it on for a reason.
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't buy a car without a seatbelt. And then as you're like, looking, the car's coming this way, you wouldn't turn back to your spouse and be like, hey, maybe it's a good time for us to get that seatbelt option installed, right? Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Great analogy.
Truly, but I think that's how we think it could happen. It's like when I get sick or when I get closer to that time.
Yeah.
When that left turn starts to get like whatever analogy you think you are anticipating, I think that it's the wrong way to kind of consider life insurance. Yeah. I think we just have to assume it like a responsibility, like we would everything else, like the seatbelt. It's second nature now. How many times you get in the car and like not just put it on? Yeah. It's been a requirement for so long that it has just become a part of us, and I think that that's probably the way that we should be leaning into life insurance.
Just you saying that, it reminds me how when I do, if I'm like rushing somewhere and I get in and I just go, my youngest is always like, seatbelt, seatbelt, seatbelt. If my seatbelt is not on, he is like, stop, seatbelt.
It's ingrained.
And I have ingrained it in them, and now it's like for those little moments that I forget, it's like seatbelt on now.
Well, now the cars don't even let you forget, right? They like stop beeping and talking. No, but I mean, and I like that analogy, but I mean, so many of the things that we've talked about, I feel like is the real crux of the matter. And I think, those paradigm shifts are so important. I've always told this story. I'm going to try not to get emotional when I say it, but life insurance for me is how I say I love you to my family. Yeah. Like, and I truly, I don't feel good as I can't be my best self and say those words and not have it. The two don't work together for me. Like I can't, because I don't mean it. I can work hard all day long. We can have all these great. If I die and I don't make it home and I leave you holding the bag, that's an incomplete truth for me. And so it's funny, as things have ebbed and flowed in our family, budgets, and always looked at them. I've told my wife, I'm like, we're going to pay that mortgage and we're paying the life insurance. Like, we can let a lot of other things go, but I can't take the scenario where you're not okay.
Yeah.
Like, it just
exactly. Yeah. Because that's what we're anticipating, especially once you've committed to like being a caretaker for people. Mm-hmm. Being responsible for them. What do I look like? Allowing a time to come where it has just flipped on you, without any preparation or without any planning. So I hear you.
Well, because we're working with Life Happens here. Yeah. I don't want to get too technical, but I do imagine it's probably important for us to talk a little bit about life insurance and maybe get into some of the elements, and certainly also allow our audience to have some questions. I'd like to start first though with if you can talk about some of your experience, because I know you did work with a life insurance professional. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear about that, some of the tools that professional helped you work with. And you even mentioned the fact that you've made changes, so how those changes have been made and how you've kind of reassessed things for yourself. I'd love to hear all about that, because I think that that's really helpful.
Yeah, well, when we started, like I said, when we were married without the kids, it was through a personal friend who I knew, worked in life insurance. And so I hit her up, was like, we're at a place where we want to do this. Give me the information. It's just us and our one child. And so it was really low, very minimal monthly, like, oh, this is it. This is all it's going to cost me. Great. Like, awesome. Then she had our first child, and then I changed it then. And in doing some more research, happened to, I think I increased the policy at that time. And then I had our third child. And at the same time, I think that's when I first got introduced to Life Happens.
Yeah.
Was, 2021 about. And so digging more into the website and the blogs and everything and really getting more information from Life Happens, I was like, maybe I'm not doing as much research as I should. And so then in doing that, I ended up switching companies and just recently increased our policy again. Just because now they're at an age where 3 years later now, and we're about to go out of the country together. And I just wanted to know that, like, if anything happens, like, now I know for sure, like, this amount is going to cover us cover them for a little bit more. Like, I more than doubled what our policy was. And it just, for good reason.
Yes, I was going to say, and our rate
barely change,
didn't double, right? So I think that's where people typically suffer, is like,
shop around.
I need this much, and I looked at this place and it's $500 a month. Whatever they see, they're like, that's an expense, that's a car note, and I'm not interested in whatever. But I think that's typically that's my motto, you know. I'll do a little research and then I'm going to call it, you know. But the good thing is having a partner
who doesn't call it.
No, doing your research.
Who's
right?
gonna keep searching.
There is something about doing the work and finding something that fits you, and that's for anything, right? Like, we all should not just be looking at the first provider offered to us and then saying, all right, yes, you have what we need. It's just impossible.
And it's also finding what works for you and your family and your situation, because what I've learned is that there are term policies, there are universal or life, policies, and there's different rates on those. And yes, I eventually want to get to a life policy, but right now we're at a term, and it's because that's what fits our budget. But when my budget increases, I will, switch into, so just also learning all of those things has been very helpful as well.
And keeping them all front of mind. I think that tapping into these things doesn't need to feel like I only do this once every 5 years, because that's often what people feel like when it comes to important things. I'm going to check on my trust. I'm going to check on my will. I don't know. But it's not something you're in all the time. It's something that you literally touch when, I don't know, the Christmas one every other year, and it's like, I think that knowing what your policy is, understanding it, seeing how it affects you, and then keeping it front of mind, like it being something that you're more in tune with all the time, allows you to say, this life change requires also this to change. And allowing those two things to kind of be intact, if that makes sense.
No, well, it does. And, your mindset has changed, because you just mentioned, like, now this is something that triggers you to think, oh, I need to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love hearing that. And, I imagine working with a professional helped. Were you surprised at how affordable it was?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was shocked that I could more than double my policy and only pay $4 more per month. I was like, wait, what? I was like, I am so glad that I took this time. And yes, it was a lot of questions, and we went through, and it took us, we had an hour conversation about it, but that 1 hour, like, really changed things for me. It switched things. And I was all like, this is so much better for us. Works for us so much more, and like doesn't mess up my budget at all. Like,
still something we can afford.
Yeah, work through completely.
Yeah. I love that. And you need it to fit like the clothes you're wearing, right? Like, you're not going to get grandpa's suit on.
Exactly right.
That doesn't work.
Right.
No, I love that. You've got a huge audience and a lot of relationships and a lot of folks that you are connected to. And I'd be interested and us kind of talking through things that maybe you've come across in your community. Do you know if people have questions that, you know, we should talk through now live?
Yeah, I had put a question box up a couple weeks ago, just letting our audience know that we were doing this. And there were some that came up. I had, okay, so like there was one family, they just got married and just had a baby. And so was wondering that now that they have kids, they don't know how to get started with life insurance. What should they do? Right? Was one of the questions. And so
I mean, what a great question to start with, right? That's the best question.
Perfect.
Yeah. Love it. What a setup. As if we scripted this, and I'm glad we did. So, you know, I mean, I think, and this is where that tool that Life Happens has on the website is so helpful.
So with the question box, it's like, great, I'm gonna address this in our live, but immediately I was like, thank you so much for submitting your question. And here's the link to Life Happens to where you can start. This is a great starting place that is non-biased, that is just going to give you the information so you can figure out which path you want to go on. But it just gives you everything that you need without kind of like shoving it down your throat of this company and this agent and this was the one. Like, no, look at all of this, see what is available, and now make the right decision for you. So,
and that calculator, again, it's intuitive. Once you start to see it and you see where those numbers come from, then it does make sense, right? So, you know, things that commonly come to the table in the calculation. I think the one that we tend to underestimate a lot is, and I don't like to be too technical, I just call it the lifetime of lost earnings, right? All of the money we would have made had we lived, right? And it's like, you know, especially if you're really young, you don't even know what, I mean, it's great to think we've got massive upside earning potential, and I'm sure we do, but to quantify that on some level, newly married with a kid, like, you know, you have no idea what that's going to look like, but that's kind of that big component that you want to try to get a number together for, because, you know, that's a huge driver for what makes sense. And then, you know, you've already mentioned other things, paying debts off, if you want to set aside money for college. So those tend to, I think, probably are the biggest three that we see. But that's why, again, you know, you go in and you use that calculator, and now all of a sudden you have something that's concrete, but it's not arbitrary. It's meaningful, it's personal, and it makes sense for you and for your family.
It's a great way to get started, for sure. To start to compare the numbers, get your mind wrapped around what it could look like.
Another one that we had got that I related to a lot because it was the same conversation I had with my mom, was somebody had said that they have it through their job. I think you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about it. But they were just like, you know, I have a policy through my job. Do I need to get a second policy? And I was just like, I don't know how the technicalities of multiple policies and things work. And so I was like, I'm going to have a live and I will let him address that on that part. But I do know that when they told me the amount, I was just like, how much do you have in credit card debt? Like, and that was my first thing, because I was like, I know that. And you have more credit card debt than what this work policy is giving you. So obviously you need more, like obviously there. But that definitely did cue me. That was the one thing that I was holding in my head. Like, can you have multiple policies? How does that work? Is there work and an individual keeps it separate? Can you have two individuals, two works? Like, can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, no. And I'll start at the high level. You can technically have as many policies as, frankly, you can qualify for. The way the insurance industry looks at it is you're gonna have to quantify that there's insurable interest, right? So, you know, could I go out and apply for $100 million of coverage? Probably not, because it'd be hard to justify that I'm, you know, that somebody legitimately needs that much on me. But, you know, you can have, and many people do have multiple policies, different types of policies. You know, you can have some at work, have your own. So it's never kind of a number. So anyone listening to this should know, like, you're not capped out. If you have 4, you can't get another one. Like that's not the case.
Right.
But I think, there's a lot to kind of understand about policies that are provided to you through an employer. And I'll hit the highlights really quick because it can get kind of tricky. But the first thing everyone should do, that if you have this as a benefit, make sure you read the benefit summary provided to you from your employer, because it tells you this is how much coverage you have. It's usually one of 2 factors. It's either a stated dollar amount, like everybody at our company gets $50,000, right? Something like that, and it'll tell you that. Or it can be a multiple of your salary, and you just, again, you want to know what the number is, and obviously you can do the math based on which of those 2 scenarios it is. Now, an additional thing that a lot of times people don't necessarily see, because it varies, but that's why you want to read the benefit summary, and also maybe talk to either an HR person or an insurance professional that does life insurance. Sometimes if you have a certain multiple of your salary, the policy may have what's called a guaranteed issue limit. So let me just be real specific with what that means. Let's say I make $75,000 and the policy says it's 2 times my salary up to like $300,000, right? So I can do the math. 75 times 2 is $150,000. But there might be in the policy language, but the maximum available guaranteed issue amount is only $100,000. And if you were to get the full amount, you'd have to provide evidence of insurability or some kind of statement of health or something like that.
Got it.
So it's important to know, because I think sometimes even in that very situation, it's easy to assume I did the math, I have 150 here at work.
Yeah.
And unless you actually provided that statement, they will only recognize you with 100. So it's just important to know that that's a dynamic that exists specific to group and employer provided plans. I think the last piece to realize is the plans can be portable. So when you leave your employer, if you felt like you wanted to keep the coverage, oftentimes you can.
Wow.
But you want to know what that can look like, and what the cost would be. So just always an important thing to be thinking about when it comes to understanding, that part, because it can be an important like foundational piece of coverage. And every dollar amount matters.
That
part.
The more the merrier is what we're saying.
Right? Yeah.
Folks.
Yeah. There's
we want more.
The old joke that there's never been a widow that complained about getting too much life insurance. So
imagine that. I've never heard the joke, but it's funny. Adds up for sure.
I love that. But I think that was a great question, and I know, man, we got into some of the weeds on some things that I think are kind of challenging, but I hope that helped anyone at least take a look, right? Hey, if I've got this, I just want to make sure I know what it is, and how it's going to work for my situation. What kind of other questions? These are really good, man. You've got amazing followers. We got such a great community.
We're interested and it's all coming from a place of like not knowing too. So I was all like, I'm so glad. So we did kind of
maybe
5. Oh yeah. What is universal life insurance? So I did have somebody ask me,
or maybe the difference between that and term, if that's the two options.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'll go through kind of in as layman's terms as possible, because I hate financialese and all that kind of stuff. So there's probably 3 major types of life insurance, categorically speaking, and there can be subsets of different names and types. I'm just going to go really, really high level, because I think that should help us at least kind of know the landscape. So the first one is term.
Yes.
And I think most of us are familiar with it, and we see it used most effectively when, it is what it sounds like. You get a stated amount for a stated period of time. After that period of term ends, the policy actually can continue, but what happens is your premium can change, and it does. and it goes up significantly. And so oftentimes a lot of either if you haven't done something to make that policy permanent, such as like a conversion privilege, many times we don't see people continuing those policies after the term ends. It doesn't mean you can't, but just, and so, you know, those fit very strategically into situations where there's a definable need for a definable period of time. Like your mortgage. I got a 30-year mortgage, $500,000, boom. All right, there's a number and a period of time. Right? Kind of a good framework, a good example where those fit very, very strategically. There's a big umbrella of universal life. A lot of kind of different subcategories, index, variable, but just kind of the way that I think it's important to think of universal life. In many respects, it's permanent term.
Yes.
It's a way to build a policy and have a certain amount of cash value to sustain it beyond 20, 30, whatever years, right? So you can design it flexibly to meet kind of, frankly, any long-term goal or to have it be around until, you know, you're 100 years old or whatever it is. So there's flexibility in looking at that, but there's going to be a little bit higher of a premium commitment depending on kind of how you're going about it and how you design it. Exactly. So I think the thing to remember when it comes to universal is lots of different types. Definitely work with somebody that will help you understand what they are. There's different flavors, as I would like to say. Like Baskin Robbins, there's like 32 flavors or whatever of universal. So just be prepared for that. And then the third main type, and again, I think probably people have heard of and be familiar with, is whole life. And that one also is a cash value built policy with a lot of kind of guarantees that we see used a lot of times, frankly, also to build and use life insurance that can be considered also an asset because it has cash in the policy that a lot of times people use then to say, if I don't die, right, the good thing happened, I didn't die prematurely. Now I can have this be something that I can access financially to get value back out of. And so, and by the way, just preview of coming attractions, there's no one right answer. There's no one type of policy. They're not better or worse than the other. They don't compete against each other. None of those things are true, right? Because I've seen a lot of stuff out there in the marketplace where it's kind of like we try to create scenarios where it's like there's only one right way. And we've already talked about this. There is no one right way, right? There's only the way that makes sense for you. So, you know, I think any of these types of policies can happen. And frankly, a lot of times people end up creating kind of a life insurance framework for themselves that has different policies working at the same time. But that was a lot, man. That was a mouthful. I'm sorry. And I ran through that really fast, faster than I thought I would. So.
But it's good. It's still good. That basically term is a certain amount of years. And then universal life is, it keeps you your whole life.
But whole life is for a set amount of time. And if you didn't need it, you can kind of utilize it.
Not a same.
I think whole life. Think of it as I've got it's going to be around my whole life, but I can also really design it to be an asset as well as a protection vehicle. And so the thing that people really need to consider is how do they balance those two scenarios? You know, and fit it into their life.
That makes sense. Love that. Love that. What a time.
Right.
This is great.
Everybody's either taking notes or going like, "Oh my God,
I know.
There's that many."
Like,
Good Lord.
What have I been doing?
What other questions do you think we should dive into?
Where's the?
I think
it was the work one, the difference between that. I feel like there was one other one.
No, I don't think that there's any other like big ones. We've touched on so many.
A lot of them were like, you know,
we've kind of been touched on as we've been communicating through.
I noticed Pamela put a something in our comments. Somebody asked about policies for kids.
Okay, I do have a question though, because I can't see any comments from like the very beginning when they were still
man.
posting cities and states.
Yeah.
So
So
like
maybe you can see
anything
them.
else that came in, we cannot see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
See your
All right.
questions.
Thankfully, I've been trying to pay attention to a lot of that.
Good,
So
good.
I'm sorry. So so that one was really good. Policies for kids.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, I do think that can be really important. Not because you hope something's going to happen to your kid.
Yeah.
But because, like we're talking about, the earlier you get covered, the less expensive it is.
Exactly.
Most of the time, depending on how young your child is, there's not going to be necessarily a medical component to even getting them covered, because it's really hard to do a medical evaluation on a 1-year-old. What do you got? What are we really dealing with here, right? So it can be a great time to, get one of your kids covered and set them up for success later in life, so that way they've got something kind of in place.
Yeah.
But I find a lot of times, and this is where we see that whole life type of policy, is a lot of times that's the type of coverage that you'll have for a child, because again, it has that value. So we know it's going to be around forever, as long as they live.
Yeah.
And you can design it to also potentially have access. So like if like I used myself as an example, we got a policy when my daughter was born, and designed it so that way there could be enough potential value in the policy that around the time she goes to college, if we needed to access some of that, we could. So again, like, I think that it's a great thing to think about. I think sometimes people have said, like, it seems so morbid, and yeah, sure, like, you're not trying to do this because you're worried about something happening to your kid. Although, I mean, that's not something you can dismiss, but I think a lot of times it's kind of like being really smart about setting them up for success, and that can be something that's so important. And unfortunately, there are rare occasions where you don't know if their health is going to be amazing down the road or in early adulthood. Maybe there are some challenges, and you might have protected that insurability by getting them something. So, certainly something to look at. Obviously a scenario that's specific for every parent and every family to think about, but don't underestimate the value of something. And again, you could have like a kids policy where you're putting in like $20, $30, $40 a month. It doesn't have to even be a significant commitment.
Yeah, I remember that. That's really cool.
We have a small one.
Yeah.
For kids.
Oh.
Yeah.
When I was younger, when it was just Cameron, when it was just the one kid, we had a similar to that, a whole like for him as well. And I remember at 18, it was like you could pull from it and allow him to, it was like in the same way that you're talking about. And I think that if we better understood those sorts of programs or those sorts of policies, I think more people would take advantage. Not because, it really can feel like you're throwing money into the wind, but like the ability to have it as a financial asset later could transform how people even look at it. It could make you a little bit more inclined to put those protections in, knowing it's not completely lost.
Yeah,
really cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's been a couple questions asking about final expense policies.
Never heard
what
of
is I
never heard of it.
Yeah, so those are interesting. I guess the easiest things, that they're life insurance policies. They're titled final expense because I think that they're oftentimes they've been set up to remind people of kind of like a base amount that might be needed to cover a funeral.
Funerals.
So a lot of times you'll see those policies, and I say, well, I'll use this about as directly as I can. Marketed, not in a pejorative way, but just as they're set up. They might be for $25,000, $30,000, $50,000. And again, there's a lot of them out there in the marketplace. I even think you might see some of those still in place, like Colonial. I don't mean to talk specifically to providers, but some of them go to I think even AARP, or there may be some associations that promote and sponsor places like that, or policies like that. But what they are, again, is just to make sure if you don't happen to have coverage at that point in your life, but you feel like you still want some, then a lot of times people will try to see if they should get a final expense policy. I like to think and say that, you know, doing the life insurance planning that we're all talking about right now will set you up so you don't have to be at that place to need one of those. I'm not saying that they're not valuable, because they are, and they exist for a reason.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when I see people considering them, it's oftentimes because they maybe still need coverage that they don't have. Right? They don't have anything now. They're like, man, I really would love to get whatever I can. So, you know, sometimes something really is better than nothing. Yeah. But if all of us out there can do the work now to be more strategic today, usually that alleviates the concern down the road from us needing something later on.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's the goal, everyone. Let's set ourselves up for success.
Right?
That's right.
No, but seriously, I'm like,
that's what we need.
I don't want to, you know, now that I've done all the work of talking through these technical things, which I hate, because I know half of our audience probably like goes to sleep at that kind of stuff, and believe me, I get it. Like, you know, we didn't all roll out of bed going, yay, life insurance. I know. For me, it's yay coffee. But as we kind of wrap up, I want to give you guys the opportunity to put out any, not just shout outs, but recommendations to the community. What do you really want people to get out of this? And what one step would you ask people to take from this experience if they got something from it?
Mine's definitely going to be to go to lifehappens.com and get, like, this nonprofit gives you all of so many resources. Coming from a person who did not have the knowledge, got a policy through a friend, and didn't do that much research on it in the beginning. I just was like, I've heard I should have this. I'm going to do this. I know you, so I'll do this one, and not doing it. And then later on, coming across Life Happens, getting all of this information, being like, there's some other things that I should consider and some shopping to be done. So I know that this is not something that within the Black queer community is really prominent. It is not something that a lot of us have. Okay, baby. It's not something that a lot of us have. And so there can be a fear into stepping into that unknown, you know? And so my advice is, don't be fearful about it. Get the information so that you can get the knowledge to make the choice that is right for you.
Yeah. I mean, taking advantage of choices is the only way to really be powerful in these scenarios. You know, being ignorant to what options we have, like lost on how to get the information, I think that it just continues to put people in really, you know, sad situations when at the most vulnerable times of your life. So I have the same recommendation. Go do the research. The thing about Life Happens is it's not a policy. You're going to compare numbers, compare agencies, like get the information, see what you might need, use the calculator. So I think that I love that it's this non-biased kind of neutral zone to figure things out. And you need the information. So I
and you can read up on people's stories and their experiences. Ours is on the website as well.
So like,
just being able to, sometimes it's easier when you can relate to, you know, another family, see their experience, what they went through, and be like, oh dang, you know, I could see that, you know, happening. It feels like something a little bit more tangible and relatable. It makes it
real.
Absolutely. Well, you guys have been amazing.
This is great.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. And
I'm really sorry that we couldn't like respond to things in the comments because it just wasn't moving for us at all.
So I have the same spot. We've seen none of your comments. If you're here and you're talking, we appreciate you. Thanks for being here. I hope you got your questions answered.
You guys are fantastic. And I think we should say until next time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Thank you, MyLin. Thank you, SK.
Thank you.
Guys.
Appreciate it.
Bye.